Hi!
Hi!
Nandito na naman tayo sa bagong episode ng Kamusta Ka, Classmate? So, last week wala ako dito. Classmate, pwede mo ba sa akin i-recap at sa aming lahat kung ano yung nangyari last week?
Of course, Classmate Ino. And para sa mga hindi nakapanood ng last episode namin, previously we talked about mga adjustments namin mga DJs under the new normal. So, Classmate Ro, for today's episode naman, ano nga ba yung pag-uusapan natin?
Nako, classmate Yab, super interesting and super important ng topic natin for today. For this week. Ito, ang topic natin for this week's episode is something na often siyang nakakalimutan ng mga tao. And that is our mental health. For this episode, mag-share tayo ng mga things kung paano natin sisipin ang ating mental health. And later on, may special something kami para sa inyo. Ikaw ba? Ikaw magsimula ng topic. How do you keep your mental health in check during this pandemic?
So sa akin, bago kasi magkaroon ng quarantine period, my way of escaping from unuseful thoughts ay yung magiging busy. And since nagkaroon tayo ng quarantine period, so ang hirap maging busy kasi usually wala tayong ginagawa. So what I do is, I try to keep the activities na ginagawa ko before daily. So yung gigising sa umaga, magkakape, ganyan. Tapos before, sanay ako na every morning I go to church service. Or hindi man every morning, pero halos araw-araw merong church service. What I do now is that daily, yun yung daily ko na ngayon, yung online masses. That's how I establish my hope na things will get better and that this too will pass. And usually natin narinig and nakikita during these times of crisis. And also, ang ginagawa ko ay nagsusulat ako ng poems. Kasi that's my way of writing down, expressing kung ano man yung nararamdaman ko or naisip ko, good or bad man yun. And at the same time, nagagamit yung utak, tapos pahinga na rin ng puso, tsaka ng isipan natin. So, ikaw ba, Classmate Ino, how do you keep your mental health in check during this quarantine period?
Ako, same lang as classmate Jen. Gusto ko rin maging productive this quarantine. Pero related sa ating first episode ng KKK, ayun, parang sobrang peace at mind ko pag nagbe-baking ako. Like, grabe yung aura ko, ang ganda-ganda palagi. Pag nagbe-bake ako, parang pag hinahalo ko yung dough ng cookies ko, parang, wow, okay na ako. Parang ganun siya, kaganda yung effect sa akin ng baking. And as much as possible din, gumigising ako ng maaga talaga. Tapos yun, nagiging productive ako pag maaga yung gising ko. Ang dami kong nagagawa, nakakapag-chores ako. Kaya ayun, ang ganda ng maraming nakaka-help sa mental health ko during this quarantine. Ikaw naman, classmate, ano sa'yo? Ano sa'yo?
Ako kasi, syempre, ngayong quarantine and sobrang nervyosa kasi ako and minsan ina-atake ako ng anxiety, parang sobrang ako nag-overthink. So, ang ginagawa ko is nag-check din ako sa mga friends ko kung kamusta sila, parang to ease and to lessen yung worries na parang sinasarili ko lang, hindi ko siya kinikimkim kasi mas mahirap daw yon. So, ayun, and bukod doon, nag-try lang ako mag-relax, parang kumakausap ako ng iba sa bahay para hindi mag-overthink din. And of course, ikaw, classmate Ro, ano nga ba yung ginagawa mo this quarantine?
Ako naman, ang ginagawa ko minsan, kasi every time that I wake up, minsan, may mga days na pagkagising ko, bad energy agad yung nararamdaman ko. So, ang ginagawa ko, when I wake up, nag-meditate ako agad. And meditation doesn't mean na kailangan mo nasa nature ka or nasa nasa specific place ka talaga. Pero what I do is I just take deep breath. So, pagkagising ko, magdalaan lang ako ng 5 minutes bago ko lumabas ng kwarto. Hihinga lang ako and then I will tell myself that it's gonna be a great day. And then, and I think that's one of the things na gustong-gusto ko talaga as a part of my day. Kasi it offsets the negative energy na nararamdaman ko and baka maramdaman ko pa throughout the day. And another thing that I do is minsan I do my makeup and make myself look good. Kasi during this time, yun nga, nakakaligtaan natin na ayusin yung sarili natin, to make ourselves feel good. Yun nga, nasa bahay lang naman tayo. And siguro sa akin, at sa mga ibang classmates din natin, baka yun din yung mga gumagana sa kanila. Kasi sabi nga ng Watson, when you look good, you feel good. So,
Sure.
Alright, so that ends our sharing. At dahil nakapag-share na tayo ng ating mga experiences or mga tips natin on how we take care of our mental health, sabi nga ni Classmate Bro kanina, merong something special sa episode natin ngayon. And that's because we will have our guest. She is a PRC registered guidance counselor and the Adamson University guidance counselor at the College of Business Administration Guidance Office. She is none other than Miss Susan Mondano.
Welcome po sa Kamusta Classmate, Ma'am Susan. Dito po tayo sa isang series ng Falcon Radio.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank
in
you.
your radio show. It's a pleasure. It's
You're
always
welcome.
a pleasure to be helped, to be able to serve. Yeah. Well, I guess it's best that let's first define what's mental health before I even answer that. Define mental health is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. All right. And of course, there are three components of mental health, such as emotional well-being, which includes happiness, interest in life, satisfaction, and some others. And there's also the psychological well-being component, which includes liking most parts of one's own personality, being good at managing the responsibilities of daily life, having good relationships with others, and being satisfied with one's own life. And there's also the other component, which is the social well-being, which refers to positive functioning and involves having something to contribute to society. It means social contribution, feeling part of the community, there's social integration, believing that society is becoming a better place for all people. This is the so-called social actualization, that the way society works makes sense to them, the social coherence. I've been so much engaged in spiritual exercises. There's no day that I fail to attend online mass together with my family. There's deliverance prayer. There's divine mercy, and a lot more spiritual activities. It's just not that, because I believe that there has to have balance, for me to be able to more or less maintain my mental health, my sanity. Yeah, being aware of that. Yeah, so in the family, it has been an opportunity to bond with them, by way of creating new menus, cooking new menus, and talking, discussing family matters, not just within the household, but connecting with siblings through conference calls, siblings who are from different places already residing here and abroad. And yeah, of course, there's that observance of the washing of hands, which I guess I have become paranoid about that. It's like I wash my hands and sanitize my hands with alcohol in time a day, countless times in a day. Yeah, and of course observing social distancing even within the household, right? And well, of course, observing good diet. We've been trying to come up with healthy meals, right? With all the veggies and all, and of course the hygiene part, and of course the number of hours of sleep, right? Well, actually, when there's change, there's a normal reaction, of our body, those changes rather, so there's stress, but actually, when there's a pandemic, to be particular about it, people tend to really feel worried, have this fear, anxiety. I think the best answer to that, the negative effects of this pandemic and quarantine period on the mental health people is very subjective because, people will always have that reaction, but they can always make that into something positive. Okay, so it's really a matter of having a good response to it. Okay, so but it's just normal to get worried, to be anxious, to have fear. What if you get infected? What if a member of your family gets infected? What if your relatives out there, and whatnot? But it's how you deal with the stress that really matters. Okay, so meaning, because when stress is dealt with negatively, then it becomes a distress. Okay, so that would already affect us. That stress, when becomes chronic, okay, would already impact on us physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically. So there's science to it, right? That when we become distressed, when there's chronic stress because of the way we deal with the stress, then there is already an effect to our immune system, on our immune system, and etc. Psychologically, we feel bad about ourselves already. Emotionally, we feel down, and etc. Then that will lead to something else, no? So at this point, I'd like to actually emphasize that it's people should be more mindful as to how to respond to this kind of crisis, no? Okay, because pandemic, for example, the presence of that invisible enemy that we have, it's the COVID-19 pandemic. That's something that we cannot control, right? But what we are in control of is our response. Okay, and so if we respond to it in a more meaningful and positive way, then that will determine the outcome of our response. See, if we respond negatively, then most likely we get a negative out. But if we respond to this COVID-19 pandemic in a positive way, then most likely we get positive outcome out of this. This is a formula. The S plus the response, the R, cause the outcome. So if we have a positive response, we more or less get a positive outcome. So in the formula, the only thing that we have control over is the response. Because any stimulus, if we don't have control over that, more especially we're talking of COVID-19 pandemic, then it's really a challenge in how we respond to it for us to be able to control more or less the outcome. The question can be answered, is subjective, can be answered subjectively, and it could either be that at the onset there will be some negative impacts really, which are normal, but we can always turn this sort of pandemic into something, like getting a more worthwhile outcomes depending on our responses. Well, yeah, I agree that a lot of young people tend to set aside feelings, and worries and all. To begin with, this something that needs to be modified. Yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
because the ideal way is to acknowledge feelings, the worries, and then do something about those feelings, right? So there are early signs, like maybe the person wouldn't be able to eat well already, can sleep well, or confused, or in other words, when a person cannot already productively cannot be productive, no, in life, and feeling hopeless, displaying negative emotions, and a lot more early signs, no? These are signs that, a person experiencing those really needs already some interventions. And so I suggest, strongly recommend, not to wait for those signs to occur, no? So at the onset of any fear, worry, feeling being threatened or what, then talk to someone already. There are other symptoms, no, or early signs or signals, so one must need to just be mindful, no, of what's going on a daily basis. No, you can always compare our daily routine before this COVID-19 pandemic, and as opposed to what we are experiencing now. Mindfulness is the key.
Kasali ka at kakwentuhan, kasama mo